Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us today. Before we get into this awesome interview that we had today, make sure you head down to the show notes. We got a lot of great links, a lot of good references. All the stuff from the podcast today will be down there also in the YouTube channel as well. If you're following along there, make sure you follow and subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube, subscribe to the podcast, leave us reviews, do it all.
We super appreciate it.
We super appreciate it. Today we had a great interview with Justin and Caroline Schell.
Yeah, husband and wife who are really tag teaming homeschool. You know, we often will interview, we have so far just interviewed moms. This is our first dad on the show, which has been really fun.
Bring it, unicorns. We're here.
We have moms who talk about, I do some of this and then my husband does pieces of this, and they talk about the juggle. What was really great is that Caroline and Justin have such a partnership. They really are, equally putting in time with their kids, and it's they're really tag teaming this homeschool. They show how you can do it. She's really cool.
She's a physician that has kind of a late schedule. He's an engineer working from a distance. I mean, it's a very complex homeschooling environment,
right.
And I think it's a great example of homeschooling can work in all different circumstances and all different scenarios, and I think they really show that. What normally would probably be a challenge for a lot of people, they're able to make it work. They're as you said, they're tag teaming together. They're working together as a team, and I really like to see that, because I think if it's nice to have a stay-at-home parent. It's nice to have somebody like me here doing all the work and being so awesome as I am. But sometimes. There's different scenarios. There's different family, circumstances. There's different working experiences.
Yeah, two people working part-time.
While it's nice to have
full-time.
somebody home, these guys are actually able to make it work while they're both working and, having their career, and they're able to do their homeschooling. Their children are young. They're dealing with 3 children, very tightly packed.
3 children under 5. And they're managing to juggle and homeschool together, and they have a third person. They have a nanny for part of the time that is also taking on some of the homeschool effort. I think they're really showing that you can adapt and make it flexible. The flexibility of homeschooling is kind of the saving grace in this case, and that it can adapt to a very fluid schedule, and everyone is taking their turn. I felt like this was the interview where to me, this was the "it takes a village" interview.
Oh yeah,
right, where everybody comes in.
I think the flexibility is the
and
key on
helps,
this
though,
one, yeah.
right? Like, you're not in this by yourself. Your spouse is there, and even if your spouse puts in the time that they can, and you have some outside help, and for them they have a nanny, but maybe you have grandma or somebody else that can come in and step in and take part of the time. I think it showed a really great dynamic and something different that we haven't seen in an interview. So anyway, this was a long one. We had a great time talking with Justin and Caroline.
And we're going to be following up with some curriculum reviews in the near future as well.
Right.
They are doing 2 specific curriculums. We asked them about what they're doing normally, but they have a little bit more of an in-depth interview, and that will be coming out in maybe a month or so.
Right. We'll have that. And with all this, with Justin and Caroline working full-time and juggling their schedules, Justin has also managed to create a website for homeschoolers to connect with one another and to connect with things within their community that they can do, which is super awesome. We talk all about it in the podcast, and you can find a link to it in the show notes too. But this is a great interview. So without further ado, Justin and Caroline. Justin and Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So you're our first husband and wife team. We're excited to like this is like a double date.
Yes.
We're excited
A
to
mirror
have you
match.
both.
Yeah.
It's a Zoom date. It's nice.
It's a Zoom date. So can you give us some background on you and your kiddos and why homeschooling for you and your family?
Sure. So we are not high school sweethearts. So we did meet in high school. So we've been together for, I think, I don't that might date us too much. Over 15 years.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, we're at 17 this year. So we understand.
Edged us out, I think.
But we dated through college. Justin somehow dated me through most of medical school. And we ended up back home in Maryland for my residency. Justin was working with a company down in Florida remotely up here with us, living with me. And shortly after we lived together for a little while, we ended up getting married. Shortly thereafter, we had our first kiddo, and then 2 years later, another one, and then 2 years later, another one. And the rest is history. So we've got 3 young kids, 4, 2, and 9 months. And it's pretty wild.
It keeps us busy. Yeah.
So I think starting with our oldest, we were living in Baltimore City, which is not known for its public school system.
Mm-hmm.
And we started pretty early on considering our options, public versus private versus alternative education. And we always tossed in homeschooling there as like a distant fourth, maybe. And I think I was very open to pretty much all the ideas. I don't think I had my heart set on anything specifically. But in the background of all of that, Justin was working. His background is in naval architecture, marine engineering. So that's his background. And he always had an eye, even when we were dating, he always talked about wanting to own his own company or get into entrepreneurship or do something, outside of, quote unquote, just have a job. And that's always kind of been something that he's leaned toward. And he was on a business.
That's the problem with authority. I don't know. Maybe that's it. I always wanted to do my own thing, but yeah.
Something like that. But he was out on a business trip in like Seattle, and I was home. I think I was pregnant with our second, and he called me. He was on this, he was driving, and he had like a 2-hour drive to get somewhere. He called me and was like, I have an idea for a company, and this is what I want to do. And he just started talking, and it was not specifically homeschooling, but it was kind of an alternative education idea. That idea has since evolved dramatically, which we can talk about later. But all of a sudden I was like, oh, I think we're homeschooling. Like, I think that's what he's trying to say is that we're going to homeschool. And I, like I said, I always kind of thought of it as like a distant fourth option. And then when I realized how enthusiastic he was about it, I started looking more into it and gained a lot of enthusiasm and felt like with the value system in our family and the direction of life that our family has and the kind of our hopes and dreams and whatnot for our children, on our relationship with our children and what we want to look like as a family unit, it just all kind of fell into alignment and really made a lot of sense. And I think we've been planning to homeschool for the last 2.5 years or so, but I think this last calendar year has been the first year we really made that a reality.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I had that original conversation with her, I didn't realize that I was pushing homeschooling, but that was probably because I didn't really understand what homeschooling was or what it could be. And there's a lot of learning that had happened from that point to this one, and I was coming at it, basically education and how people learn and that whole process just became kind of something that I was very curious about and really started to delve deep into. So I was coming at it more from a first principles standpoint and saying, hey, what do we want our kids' education to look like and how can we help to provide that for them? And that was what the original idea was. And like Caroline said, it's changed quite a bit since then. Yeah. But eventually it was like, okay, people are already doing a lot of these things and they call this homeschooling. So I guess we are homeschooling. So that's kind of how it came about.
So you've gone kind of on this like 2.5 year arc of like learning about homeschooling. What where did you start learning? What were the first things you researched? How did you evolve into where you are now?
Yeah, I think it was more from the alternative education space.
Okay.
Just saying, what else is out there? What do different education systems look like in different countries? What do other private models, other educational philosophies? I didn't know there were more than one educational philosophy when I started. I thought it was like, go learn stuff.
Sure.
My philosophy is to learn.
Yeah. And then
did you guys slowly settle on like something that like interests you specifically? I don't know, like were you
not really?
Montessori, Charlotte Mason, something of that nature?
I think we've both individually and together kind of looked into a couple different educational philosophies, and I think we've I think we kind of come at it from a very eclectic standpoint. We can kind of pick and choose the parts that kind of resonate with us and kind of fit with what fits in our day-to-day right now. I think we're obviously very early in our journey, and I think we may end up committing to one philosophy over another, or leaning more heavily toward one over another. But right now, I mean, I've read a book or two on Charlotte Mason. I think I've read a little bit about Montessori. We currently have a nanny that is with us a couple days a week, and she's very into Waldorf. So I've gotten a little bit into the Waldorf education style with her. So we definitely have a nice little smattering of options to choose from depending on our vibe that day, I guess.
Yeah, we probably we have 20% time for unschooling. Just kind of put them all together.
No, absolutely. Yeah, when we interview a lot of younger homeschooling parents, like ourselves, are
we're totally included.
We're totally included in that, and we see the eclectic model as kind of that first thing that people gravitate towards, because they really don't know what they don't know how they're going to like homeschooling. They don't know what it's going to be like, and they kind of put together something and they kind of like arc in a certain direction.
I think you haven't figured out yet.
Based on your learner style.
What your kid's style is, and what they have, what they enjoy doing too. Sometimes like, oh, they're more this kind of style, but they really like workbooks, I think we have to try on a lot of hats to find the one that fits us, right? And some days, like you say, something else is the right thing, even if most of the time we love to read to our kids. Our kids are huge book kids, but sometimes they're just like, they need outside, they need nature, and we can't do anything with books that day. It's just I don't know.
So for you guys, let's like kind of walk through a day. Like, what does it look like? Who does the homeschooling? Do you guys share duties? What does it look like for you guys?
So right now I work nights, so I work 3 nights a week. I'm a hospitalist, and then we, like I mentioned earlier, we have a nanny that helps out 3 days a week. And then Justin definitely works the days that the nanny is here. So at least 3 days. And then usually I try to tackle, one day if I'm not pre or post working. And so he's usually working those days, but with some level of flexibility in that as well. So we are fortunate in that there's a lot of flexibility in our schedules, but
also no normalcy.
There's very little typical days. It's every day's kind of, I mean, every week we kind of sit down and say like, okay, Monday's going to look like this, Tuesday's going to look like this, not necessarily with like curriculum based stuff, but just with like, who's going to have the kids when and where, and, what other obligations do we have that day? We definitely have a flow to our days. And that sticks, that kind of helps to help the kids with kind of what to expect is happening next kind of throughout the day. But also just, I know that if somebody's taking over, if I'm passing the kids off to Justin around 1:00, he kind of knows what our morning probably looked like a little bit. And if the nanny's with them that day, she kind of keeps with the same flow. So we usually have like our pretty normal morning routine. And then we try to get outside pretty much as soon as people are dressed for something, whether it's, an activity from our Year of Playing Skillfully curriculum, or if it's just for a walk down the street, or if it's, we have a big backyard with a kind of creek down a big hill. And if we just take a little hike down that way, or just play in the backyard, we try to get outside as soon as we can. We do a little snack time in the morning. And then the rest of the morning is usually spent either inside or outside, but in some kind of play-based activity, depending on people's moods. Sometimes at that point, if it makes sense for the day and we can get the oldest one to go through like a little bit more of a structured activity from our core knowledge foundation or something, we'll add that in. But I usually reserve that stuff for when the 2-year-old's napping. Mm-hmm. So after we survive the morning and get to lunchtime, when all the stars are in alignment, the 2-year-old naps, the 4-year-old takes like a 1-hour quiet time on her own, and the 9-month-old usually naps. And we have this blissful 20 minutes to get our lives together. And then somebody wakes up. But usually the 2-year-old's good for a really solid nap. So usually the 9-month-old and the 4-year-old are awake at the same time. And at that point, we can usually do something a little bit more directed with the 4-year-old, like more reading practice or like basic math skills. Maybe a little bit more of like either a messy art activity or a more science-based experiment that the 2-year-old would kind of just
be hugely disruptive for.
Yeah. Yeah. So we usually reserve that for when he's napping. And then once he gets up, we usually we do a lot of snack time. So we usually eat again. and then we get back outside for the afternoon.
The second snack time is usually like a snack and story time.
So, we definitely do. We kind of read throughout the day all the time, but we definitely, that afternoon snack time, we make it a little bit more of an intentional. It's not quite a straight up Charlotte Mason tea time or poetry time, but it's kind of inspired from that. We usually make sure we do some kind of reading activity, not really activity, but just a book together. And then when I'm feeling really ambitious, I kind of tie that reading activity or reading experience into something activity wise in the afternoon, outside. But sometimes that's just a theoretical, but usually we try to make that happen. And then, by the time that's all over, usually Justin's done with work or I'm heading off to work, and it's the whole, dinner bedtime routine. But our routine kind of stays the same day to day. Just when we're able to introduce those educational opportunities, definitely changes. If it's a day that's very, art heavy, a lot of those activities we can do outside or inside, but the 2-year-old can partake in them. Just as easily as the 4-year-old can, with obviously very different outcomes, but they can still be a lot of fun, and we can still go over colors, and we can still go over, whatever the activity is that day with him. And that's kind of how we structure things. We kind of have a general idea of what we want to accomplish day to day and week to week. And we kind of get it in when we can.
How do you balance working nights with like kind of the homeschooling and just like the whole routine? I know there's some parents we've talked to where they have, one of the parents works kind of a shifted schedule, maybe evening or late at night. How does that work with you guys? How do you manage that?
So I usually I'm an obstetrician, so I'm used to functioning on very little sleep at baseline. But I usually take if I know I'm working a night, I usually take a nap at some point during that day, and that I usually make sure that either Justin is available or the nanny is there that day for that. Okay. So we're very lucky to have her. And then when I come home from a night shift, I usually take a brief nap in the morning, and then I'm up for the lunchtime, rest time, afternoon activity. So I usually am present for either the morning routine or the afternoon routine, and am trying to get a nap in otherwise. On the days that I'm working and on the days that I'm not working, or nights that I'm not working, obviously it's a non-issue, but we kind of, we're lucky in that the nanny can kind of fill in the times
that post-call days, those times when you need to like get home and sleep.
Yeah.
And I can pass off to her in the morning, and Caroline can just come home and go straight to sleep.
Yeah, we did something similar to that when I first left my job to be the stay-at-home dad. I was able to pull kind of a part-time thing for almost a year, and we had I had to run like these global meetings in the morning, so I couldn't manage a 1-year-old at that time. So like I had like kind of some help come in the mornings as well, and then she went and I was able to take over from there. But I totally understand like the benefit of having a little bit of a nanny there to help offset kind of the schedules and the work schedules. It's very helpful.
Yeah. And I'm heading into it, napping when you're not, I think when we're parents, we're usually tired all the time, but all the time. But like tomorrow, for example, I'm going into work at nighttime, but I'll get a nap in at some point tomorrow, but it's not like I'm like hitting a wall and I like have to nap right at 8 a.m. or right at 2 p.m. or whatever. It's kind of, I can be very flexible with it. But when I'm coming home from work, it's usually, I help out obviously with the morning routine. We get through breakfast, we get people dressed. But by the time the nanny gets there and I get my 9-month-old down for his morning nap, I've like usually hit a wall. I'm like, I gotta go. I can't do this anymore. So it is nice to be able to kind of pass it off to her. And we don't, I've talked to some families who have a nanny or have somebody that comes in to help out that does, formally either they give them a lesson for that day or they give them the curriculum that they're doing and have the nanny kind of do that. And our nanny is fantastic. We're very, very lucky to have her. And she generally knows what we're doing with them. Like she's aware of the concepts that we're going over, and whatnot. And I think she does a really great job at integrating some of that into what she does with the kids, but we don't usually pass the curriculum stuff onto her. I don't usually say, here's the activity for the day, do this. I kind of let her do her own thing with the kids. And I think the kids like really like that. I think she's much better.
She's very good at the imaginative play. Kind of that, immersive, we'll set up a scene and everybody acts it out together. She's much more that personality. And so, she can feed off of whatever the kids are excited about that we've talked about, and can kind of continue on with that basic theme. And so that can reinforce those concepts and, get them to explore it in different ways. So I think, her talents kind of, balance out in places that aren't necessarily ours. So.
Well, it's great to show the model of, having an additional person come and just even help for a part of the schooling. I think that's really interesting. So you have these, you don't have a typical day, right? Depending on the work schedules and the way that everything goes and when the nanny's there. How do you think, what are the kind of, pros and cons of that with the kids? Do, children do like a lot of structure, but then do sometimes like freedom? Is it tough for them to not know what's coming every day? Do they roll with the punches pretty well? Or, what have you seen because the schedule isn't the same?
So, I think, I guess the same general schedule is similar from the day to day. It just kind of depends on who's filling what roles. So they kind of know what to expect, what's coming next and those kind of things. And they're, very familiar with our nanny as well. And so, I think they handle it really quite well.
They do. They definitely have, probably our oldest daughter is, she's, literally since she was a baby, she's always been like this is my inner circle. These are my people. And if you're not my people, I'm not interested in you. Like she's pretty, she was not like the happy baby smiling at people at grocery stores. She was, and she was happy. She's a happy person, but she was not, she knows her inner circle and like sticks to us and our nanny and my parents, Justin's parents. She knows who her inner circle is and is very much an inner circle kind of girl. My son, my 2-year-old is like, he's the one that's waving at everybody when we're on walks and, he's very different.
High fives at the grocery store on the way by.
Yeah. He soaks it in. So their personality wise are very, very different. But he also knows his inner, he knows his people, he knows his inner circle. And so I think they feel a lot of comfort, whether it's me or Justin or Miss Dorothy, that's our nanny. They kind of know, when we're around. The older one, it's interesting. She'll, when I'm with the nanny, like if I'm down there and we're down there together, she'll ask to do something and I'll say no. And she'll say, well, Miss Dorothy says yes. and I have to tell her, when mommy's around, mommy's in charge. And when Miss Dorothy's around, Miss Dorothy's in charge, and mommy and Miss Dorothy always work together and, we can talk about it together, but, and so now she has this thing about, whenever we're doing anything, I could be with Justin's mom or, and she'll just kind of look at me and be like, so who's in charge right now? Like where, like who am I supposed to be listening?
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a chart for this?
I know. Can I get that in a graph? And I'm like, just rest assured that I will literally always be in charge. But she, so I think she's kind of figuring out the whole, all the dynamics between people. I think the 2-year-old just kind of rolls with the punches. But she also, in her little 4-year-old mind, she knows the schedule. Like she knows that rest time comes after lunchtime, and that, after we played outside for a little bit, snack time's a coming. And if we mess up the schedule, if there's a busy day and maybe we do rest time in the car and don't really do a formal rest time, or don't read during a snack time, and she'll call you out on it. She's like, Mom, wait a minute, where's the book? Like, why aren't we doing this? Or she got angry at Justin the other day because I got
scolded. Yeah. She's it was like toward the end of the day, and I was like, no, it's dinner time. She's like, I didn't have my rest time. I need my rest time every day. Like I was like, oh, my apologies.
Well, now it's dinner time, so there's no time for rest time. So
we'll make sure we schedule that tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So they definitely get the flow. They definitely get the the power dynamics, I guess, or at least understand that there are some. The 2-year-old now, I mean, I don't know what conceptually he's actually doing, but it just randomly throughout the day, he'll just be like, Mom, what time is it? I'm like, do you have somewhere to go? Like,
yes.
But then when you tell him he challenges, he's like, I don't think that's it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right one.
But I think it's 46. That doesn't make sense, but we'll work on time.
I think in some realm he is kind of like understanding that like there are certain times that certain things happen, and he because I used to just answer, well, like now it's lunchtime, or it's rest time, or it's dinner time, but now he wants like a number to it, and you're like, you don't understand what that means, but okay, I'll tell you it's 5:70, for 5:45, and
we'll keep going, and eventually it'll sink in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So you guys have had this like kind of first year of how many months has it been? But basically the whole COVID time frame, or had last 6 months, 12 months?
The 4-year-old initially started in a preschool.
Okay.
September of 2019, in-person preschool. It was 2 days a week for 2 hours, and she fought pretty much tooth and nail almost every day going to it.
Okay.
And at this point, we had already decided that we were planning on homeschooling for elementary school. It was just that with at that point 1-year-old at home, and my work schedule was very different then. I was in a private practice, and I was 5 to 7 days a week, every other night on call. Hours, it was nuts. So it was, we were trying to get her into somewhere for some kind of educational opportunity, because we weren't really in a place to do anything formally at home yet.
Okay.
So she was there, and then when COVID hit, obviously they stopped, and we did kind of very, very, very informally, no curriculums, no nothing, very informally, kind of like tried to keep the momentum going for the rest of the year. And then July of 2020, so it's been almost, like literally now to the day, almost a year that we've been a little bit more much more intentional, I should say.
Yeah, much more intentional
with a curriculum, with a flow, with kind of getting the formality of homeschool. And and the older one now has a concept of like, we're doing preschool, but we're doing it at home. This is a homeschool. Yeah, that's right.
But I think even before that, just as far as our lifestyle goes, and having education be an intentional part of it. Everything we do, we kind of include the kids in it. If we're talking about what we're doing, kind of the narrate your life, what you're doing, and just express those things to them. And then if I'm building something or working on something, fixing something around the house, my daughter or my son's always kind of included in that too. And so and they really, really enjoy building things and helping with those kind of things. So even without the formal curriculum on the more academic subjects, we try to include an educational piece to kind of everything that we're doing.
So how has your expectation around homeschooling, you talked about it earlier about, 2.5 years, you thought about it, you wanted to do it. And now all of a sudden you're you're doing it, what has changed over the last year? Do you appreciate homeschooling more? Do you see it as more of a challenge than you thought it was, or has it gotten easier over time? What has been your expectation over this last year?
Yeah, I think it's actually probably gotten a little bit easier, just because we've gotten to try some things out, see what works, see what doesn't. I think the flexibility provides us a lot of advantages that we were looking for, and that kind of drove us to homeschooling in the first place. Obviously, the last year had additional complications. Throughout the pandemic, just finding new ways to get out of the house and try new things was difficult. I think we did a lot of outings prior to the pandemic, and obviously a lot of those were cut off. And so we said, hey, how are we going to make it through the wintertime? We can't be going outside every day if it's freezing out. And then we realized that tons of people go outside all the time when it's freezing out. Like, I have people living in freezing environments. We just put on more clothes. And so, so we just had a giant pile of clothes throughout the wintertime, and we still went outside a lot and explored, and and I think we will kind of continue to do that year round, and really, maybe that's actually kind of strengthened us in certain ways, and also just to get to the realization that we don't necessarily have to have like a curated environment for them. They can get out and explore and learn a lot, just in the ever-changing environment of our backyard. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's all kind of helped.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned in this last year, I think when I first started, I had this vision, and I didn't like the vision. I had this vision of preschool at home with like a little mat on the floor with a circle, and the children would all come and gather around me, and we would start with a ding ding ding, and we would have a morning song. And, yeah, we would have a morning song. We would talk about Monday and sing 8 songs about Monday, and then we would hop like a bunny. And I was like, God, can I be that person? Like, I'm not that person. I don't know that I want to be that person, but like, if you're homeschooling, maybe I could be that person.
How peppy can I be all the time?
Right.
Do I need to be that person?
I remember Matt.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the kindergartner teacher gene.
I don't.
Is there exactly.
I don't think I have that.
Yeah. I can fake it pretty good. I mean, I can lean into that for a minute, but not 7 days a week, not, hours a day, not anything. And I think, that's what I was nervous about. And when I started, so in July of 2020, when we really formally started, is right when my schedule started loosening up and kind of transitioning into this role that I'm in right now, which didn't happen until after maternity leave in like November. But I started off like 1 day a week, and that was my goal. I was like, okay, I've got the kids, both of them by myself for one full day a week. And I'm going to start practicing being a homeschool preschool mom. Like that's what I'm going to do. And, I made a whole schedule. It was color coded, it was everything I needed it to be. And the more days that I did like that, the more I was like, wow, like they actually are super receptive to certain activities, really not receptive to other activities. And mostly our days just kind of flow, and I can, we can work activities into our flow and have it not be like sit down, circle time, here's our school time. Like school can, maybe we won't do any quote unquote formal schooling, as formal as it gets for preschool. Maybe we won't do anything at all formal until 3 p.m. after snack time, or maybe in the morning time when they seem like they're, we do one activity and they're still kind of looking for something else to do. Maybe I toss in the afternoon activity then. And that type of flexibility and that kind of being okay with the spontaneity of it was something that's very not, that's kind of against my grain. I'm a very type A kind of have a color coded spreadsheet girl. And I feel like I really enjoyed that flexibility, that freedom. And I think that's been the biggest surprise for me, was that you can have a goal for the day and it might not happen that day. And that's just, it's okay, because it's going to happen. And there's days that there's been whole weeks where we've done like not anything on the list. Maybe we have our, list of things we want to get done for the week, and, we get through maybe 10 or 20% of it. But then one Saturday morning, the kids hop up on the kitchen island and are like, Mom, can I do an activity? And you're like, okay. And we knocked through a whole week's worth of stuff in, while we're making eggs. And it's just, like, okay, I guess we did it, and I think that flexibility was very surprising to me. And probably one of my favorite things that I've enjoyed about homeschooling is that it really can be that flexible.
So with what you did this year, and obviously it was isolation schooling, so it was a little bit, atypical for homeschooling. But how has that informed what you're going to do going forward? Your kids are preschool and younger now. Next year, your oldest is going to be kindergarten age, and so how are you going to move forward? Are you going to keep going in the same vein, or are you going to seek out a co-op for your oldest, or a parent partnership, or what are you thinking the future is going to hold based on where you were this year?
I think we've toyed with the idea of some co-ops. There's a couple. It seems like at least there's a couple of well-established co-ops close to us, and we've toyed with those ideas. We haven't formally made any declarations or joined anything yet. But I think that now that things are opening up and people are more open to in-person meetups and get-togethers and socialization, I think that our plan is at least for the next year is to do maybe a little bit more of the formal stuff with the older one, kind of redo a lot of the stuff we did with her with the 2-year-old who's almost 3, and kind of see how he responds to it. We've already started a little bit of it, and he's been doing pretty well and been pretty receptive. He's a very easygoing kid. Mm-hmm. But I think we're going to kind of stick with what we've been doing and what we know, while remaining kind of open to new opportunities. We've already started doing a couple like meetups and get-togethers and field trips with some other families over the last maybe 2 months or so. And it's been really great. It's been great to meet the parents. It's been great to see the kids interact with other kids, while having a new experience. And I'm hopeful that those opportunities will be much more frequent, and much more readily available and whatnot over the next year. And we'll see. I mean, I think the idea I love the idea of doing a co-op. I think that for us, the biggest hang up is our schedules. And, one day it would be somebody picking up and dropping off, and the next day it would be somebody else picking up and dropping off, and, or maybe we would all go. And I don't know. I think it's a little overwhelming trying to figure out the scheduling of it all. But I think kind of baby steps. I think starting off with like some field trips and meetups and friend groups and whatnot is probably what this next calendar year will hold, and maybe something different moving forward. But I think that our goal is to continue homeschooling until homeschooling doesn't work for us or doesn't work for one of the kids.
Yeah.
And I could see us doing this for as long as it makes sense for everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the things we like to do with these interviews is to see the the whole breadth of options out there. A lot of people have different environments, and you guys have a challenging timing environment. We've seen a lot of people with a large amount of kids, and they have one parent at home, and seeing how they juggle those kids is a challenge. And then you guys have more of this time component. I think it's really interesting to listen to how you solve those nuanced problems that like everybody has. We have our own nuanced problems. I have a 2-year-old who wants to destroy and get involved in everything, so I totally understand the challenges there. And being home and being a stay-at-home dad doing the homeschooling is very, there's a lot of friction out in the world with like going to dance class and gymnastics. I'm kind of invading other people's spaces, and I'm a very large person, so it's kind of scary when I come walking in. But it softens up because I got 2 girls in pink dresses. I think it's kind of I have my insecurities out front.
I think it's interesting because everybody has their own experience, and for people out there who are listening and maybe thinking that we have to go the normal school route. We did homeschool now during COVID, but gosh, we have these crazy schedules. In some ways, it sounds like homeschooling is more accommodating to the fact that you have schedule challenges than a public or private school environment would be, because you would have, the drop-offs and pickups and the homework's due on this deadline, and you don't know who's going to be there when. So it sounds like the day-to-day flexibility of homeschool really is well suited to your family.
Yeah, it really has been. I think that the last year when the older one was in a preschool, it's especially at that age, it was 2.5 hours. And I know that there are full day programs also that we, if we needed to, could have looked into, but it always was right around the time that the then 1-year-old needed to nap. And so then we'd have to have the juggle of like, okay, well, who's going to be at the house for the kid who's napping and who's going to, or do we delay his nap and then have him turn into a nut job and then he naps while she's at school, but then he's still sleeping when she needs to be picked up from school. So then do you wake him up or do you and it always happened that way. And I was never around for it because I was at work and didn't, and was just blissfully unaware usually while my husband and nanny kind of did that mental juggle. But yeah, it was always a little bit of a scheduling fiasco. And that juggle was tough. I have friends who have their kids in preschool and whatnot. And, a lot of my friends are in the medical field or other physicians. And, typically my schedule is a little bit atypical right now, but, especially for some of the other OBGYNs that I work with, you're heading into the hospital, at 6:30 in the morning, and maybe you're not getting off until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. And there's no preschool that takes your kid in at 6 a.m. and then you pick them up at 6:30. And so then you're either leaving the burden of pickups and drop-offs solely on your partner, who presumably also has a job and other obligations. And God forbid somebody gets sick for the day. And, it was always, we had the oldest one when I was in residency and had zero flexibility in my scheduling and time off and times that I had to be in and out. And it always just made sense for us to have a nanny because, it was always, I was never exactly sure when I'd be home or never exactly sure when I would need to go in. And if we were constrained to a pickup and a drop off time, that would have been very inconvenient for us.
The nature of your job is like, somebody could have a baby at any time and need you.
Yes. Yeah.
That is all. There's no way to predict when you'd be needed. That must be just so challenging.
No way. Yeah. No, it was tough. Thankfully, now I'm much more of in a shift work, but previously it was. And when I was beyond call, we would, a couple times we'd be like, yeah, no, we can go to the zoo. It'll be fine. And then, we'd get there and I'd be like, oh, Justin, I got to take an Uber to the hospital. Good luck with the 2 kids in the zoo. I hope you do well. And that was not I didn't like doing that, but
no, flexibility. I think, one of the really nice things is it just gives us more time to all be together, as a family and, really, really enjoy that time. So,
yeah, I was going to key in on that point, to talk about a flexibility. Have you seen, Justin and Caroline, in both of your guys' fields, have you seen your peers become more interested, maybe mainly due to COVID, that they are spending potentially more time with their children and not being in, the horror of the daycare 6 to 6 or something like that? Have you guys seen people, open up to being more receptive to homeschooling as an option, even outside of public schools or charter schools or any other alternative that might be out there as homeschooling? Have you seen that in your professions?
I think most of my colleagues their kids are like late middle school, early high school. And I think I have some family members with some younger children, but at least for my colleagues, I feel like the idea of homeschooling altogether was like just absolutely terrifying. Like there's no way, and it was met with such crazy resistance and whatnot. And I think it's because it was not homeschooling. It was distance learning at home, and which obviously looks very different and doesn't afford the same, you've got, the things that everybody was complaining about, the trouble with logging in, the trouble with internet connection, the trouble with, Zoom classes and meetings and what time do you have to log in and
not even just the schedule, but like when you're actually doing it, like this isn't engaging, like I'm not interested. I'm just going to turn my video off and fall asleep.
Right. So I think, for the parents who, had been in public or private school, typical schooling situation for 10 plus years, all of a sudden to be thrown into that. I think they were all just so overwhelmed with it. And I think that there was probably a very small, I mean, or maybe a medium-sized subset, but whereas, of people who maybe were homeschool curious already, and then this kind of launched them into the opportunity of homeschooling, which it was, they were already kind of receptive to that idea. But I think for the general population who probably wasn't anti-homeschooling, but obviously had enrolled their children in a typical school setting with the intention of that being the way they were schooled, and then being thrown into the pandemic schooling, I don't envy that. And I think that it was very, very overwhelming for them. And a lot of, the comments from a lot of the physicians, nurses that I was working with was just that it was, I can't imagine how people would homeschool. My kids are at home all day. They're eating all the food. They're complaining. There's laundry everywhere, and I think it probably was a huge culture shock for people. But it wasn't homeschooling, and I think that was I don't know if this did homeschooling a service or did homeschooling a disservice, because people kept calling the distance learning homeschooling for so long, and you're like, that's not what homeschoolers do.
And from all the survey data and everything, it looks like it actually has done like a service just for an unfamiliar general population. There has been some more familiarity toward the possibility, and just because parents were forced to just be more intentional and mindful about it, saying there are other options out there, people are doing those other things, what are the possibilities there, just to raise those questions and have people have that on their minds, I think has been a bit of a service. And from my side, I've talked to a lot of new homeschoolers who do plan to continue to do this after, following into the next year and everything, who got into it because of COVID. And so there's definitely, not an insignificant number of people who are just starting to look into homeschooling, or were thrust into it and said, hey, I've been considering this for a long time for A, B, and C reasons. And, now that we tried it out, this is much better for one of my kids. We consider the possibilities and, are really happy and didn't think it was going to work out. And it is working out. And so there are, definitely a good number of families that are in that boat and will continue to do it next year. So I think a mixed bag overall. Though.
Yeah.
So with these new parents and as you're saying, and we've seen the same thing. We've seen a lot of people, awaken to the fact that they have these type of choices available, and they want to communicate with other people. They want to find resources. Tell me a little bit about My School and what that does.
Sure. So My School is an in-person social network for homeschoolers. So what we aim to do is to bring people onto the platform, and if you sign up, you create a profile, and you can then search for other homeschoolers in your area, and you can reach out directly, or you can use the site to schedule a meetup and send it out to people, or schedule a field trip and say anybody who wants to come, there's 10 slots, you can book them right through the website, and then kind of organize those events. So it's kind of an attempt to bring together all the different people in an area and all the different resources, whether those are physical resources or whether it's the knowledge of the people around you, and say what additional sources of education can we find right in my community, and by bringing all those people onto the same platform, you can access a much more diverse set of resources, and a much more diverse knowledge base. So long term, I'd like to have it so that we have enough resources on there that you can come and say I want to learn about archery, and you search that, and then all the local places and individuals that can help you learn about that are there. Or you say I want to host a Roblox meetup. My kid's really into this, and I want to see if there's anybody else in this area. And so you just throw it out there, schedule the event through my school, and send a link out to your Facebook groups or friends, things like that. And then, you can have people book right through the site and say, okay, there's 20 people coming, and great. And then hopefully you can find more people that have similar interests to either you or to your children.
And so people can create an account and actually, put pins in places where there are events and stuff, or can businesses, get on there and say, hey, I do horse riding in the summer. Anybody wants to, if you love spirit, come on over and, ride some horses or something. Are they able to kind of do that? Are businesses doing it, or are you asking users?
Yeah, so we have both. There's individual profiles, and you as an individual can both make suggestions on cool places to go. Just go onto the homeschool map and suggest a spot and say, hey, this is a park that we really love. I thought we would drop it on here. You can leave a rate and review, those kind of places. And then, businesses can also come on, or co-ops, and say, hey, this is where we are. This is the services we offer. And then they can schedule events as well. So, there's a lot of camps or classes or things like that, that, either parents are running independently or that organizations are running. And so all of them can bring this to the same platform, and you can just, use the tools to search and filter for exactly what you're looking for. And, hopefully we can bring on enough of those resources in enough, geographic locations that we can provide those resources for, as many people as possible.
Yeah. And I think what's unique about it, and what's I think is the most helpful thing about it, is that it's all map based. So, and like you said, you can be a business or an organization, or you can be a person that's recommending something else. But you can also just, once you create a profile, you drop your pin on the map, in a rough location about where you are. You don't have to give away your address or anything, but you drop a pin on a map, and you can pull up a map and say, oh, here's 20 other homeschool families close by to me. So instead of, I'm on several different Facebook homeschooling groups. I'm on like a, just a general one. I'm on one for my state. I'm on one for my county. I'm on one for the city that's close by to me. And it's multiple times a day that somebody's saying, hey, I just moved here, just looking for some friends for my 8-year-old child. And, anybody want to do a meetup? And, they get 60 responses, 20 of which are just people who are saying hi, 30 are responses saying like, hey, we can meet up. And then, they have this little side conversation about where they're located, and they find out they're located 2 hours away from each other. That might not make sense, and it's like a full-time job trying to figure out, how to find people. But if you just go to a map and you're like, okay, well, here are the people that are the closest to me. It looks like this person has, you don't have to put details about your children, but you can put their ages there. You can say, oh, this person has kids that are similarly aged. Let me send them a message. And it can be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more filtered down, instead of doing like the listserv emails and the Facebook groups and the, everything just seems very disjointed. And I think that's, I found it at least very intimidating when I first got on those into those groups, just feeling like, there was a lot of noise. And, if all you're looking for is like a local family to meet up with at a park one day, it's, kind of hard to see that through all the discussion about curriculum and about, this homeschooler review and these new laws coming through, and,
it's hugely time consuming. I think, whereas it is Facebook's goal to get you to, stand there for as long as possible. It's kind of my school's goal to get you the information you're looking for and get you off into the real world as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. And so I think just the layout, structure, and the way that the information is presented is with the intention of saying, these are the places you can learn around you. Now go out there and do it.
So what's your vision for the site? Of course, we got to sign up, and everyone needs to go out and create profiles. I've already done one. We're on the map.
Awesome. That's great.
Yep. So everybody, is listening to this, go out and get profiles and get set up. But where do you want to see this go ultimately? Like, what's the big vision for what you want My School to be?
Yeah, I think, long term, I want to bring on, as many, people and learning opportunities as possible, and just bring them all to the same platform. Just because I think there's so many, untapped resources, both, like I mentioned, physical resources, whether those are facilities that you might have that other people, don't, or whether it's, knowledge about whatever whether it's your career or just a hobby, that you don't even know exist right in your area. So, for example, my wife, she's an obstetrician, but also a hobbyist beekeeper. And, those are like, a lot of people were recently asking on the Facebook groups, hey, is there anywhere we can go to learn about bees? And, some of those people were a couple miles away, so those are the experiences. You're like, oh, sure. We'll just host you at our house. We raise bees in the backyard. You can come on over and check this out firsthand, and happy to talk about it. I think, people talk about the most, some of the most influential teachers that they've had in their lifetime are the people who are just, very enthusiastic about what they were learning about. And I think, hobbyists, I think, have that personality and that, excitement around whatever topic it might be. And so if we can just find ways to connect people with the intention of, learning something new, I think that's kind of the ultimate goal of My School, to say, that museum down the street, that park, these people around me, these are all part of My School. These are all the places that I learn.
I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting concept. We found it very tough having kids we feel like all the activities and opportunities for our children are super word of mouth based.
They are.
Like, we didn't know that, preschool signups happened in the spring before. Like, who knew?
Whoops.
Right. We didn't know that our town had a lacrosse team until the boy next door started playing lacrosse. There's lacrosse here. We didn't know that. Right. There doesn't seem to be a good central repository for both learning opportunities and activity, enrichment opportunities for our kids that you could find anywhere, whether you're a homeschooler or not. There doesn't seem to be any platform really that can just give me what I want just for family stuff and just for kids. Yeah. I feel like it's all, oh, did you hear about that cool class? Oh yeah, there's a kids ballet school and it's over there and they do this special homeschool class. And didn't you know about that? Like, how would I
right? Why would I know about that? Yeah, we were recently adding we've some organizations add their own classes and whatnot, but we've been adding some classes and camps to the site as well. And I was going through one of the local parks that we go to, like, all the time has like these incredible summer opportunities. They've got these bug walks, and for kids, they've got bug walks. They've got they've got a little area where they have chickens and geese, and they have like a little talk about that, and they have all kinds of stuff that they're doing there. They have a little community garden. You can go do like a little weeding experience with them, or you can go harvest stuff during different times. They have all these really cool experiences, and we literally go to that park. I mean, probably 3 times a month. Yeah. We're there all the time, and I was going through, and I was like, oh my God, I had no idea that they were hosting this. And it's just because there's, unless you are very intentional about it and go to each one of these. I mean, we're surrounded probably by 10 nature centers within a 15-mile radius. Unless you go to each one of their individual sites and you go to each one of their individual event pages and you search through all of them and you look through all the ages and you figure out which ones you can go to, and then you have to bring a check, and it's so disjointed. And I think that the vision, like Justin said, is to get rid of that, that how disjointed it all is, and say, okay, I'm looking for an opportunity for my kids. Here are their ages. Here are our interests. Or maybe you've older kids. Maybe you've got kids in high school and you're doing a astronomy lesson, and you want to know if there's any hobbyist astronomers around, or if you want to know if there's any, space museums around, or, you can just type it in and filter by that. Or like you mentioned earlier, Matt, if your kid is expressing interest in horseback riding and you want to do like a slow roll into that, and start with a grooming lesson or something, you can look around and say, instead of posting on Facebook and saying, hey, does anybody do horseback riding? And and then you get 25 responses. Some people are just responding to say, hey, I'm interested in this too. And then some people are responding and they're 3 hours away. And then other people are responding and saying they have a friend and giving you all kinds of information, but they never answer your message. It's so disjointed. And I think that, homeschooling it's wonderful. And we've enjoyed this last year a lot, but it's also a lot of work. And, it's a lot of work from a social standpoint too. I mean, people, there's the running joke about socialization for homeschoolers, and how will they ever socialize? And they socialize because the parents create these really great, incredible social opportunities for their children, and have the opportunity to opt in and opt out of different social opportunities based on their value system, based on what their children's wants and needs are. But creating those opportunities is a lot of work.
Yeah, and you can find general ones, but if you want to have it have any specificity to it, just finding one in your area that has any of the specific things you're looking for, takes even more time to look for. Right. And so just kind of bringing down the amount of work that's involved in finding opportunities is one of our primary goals.
That's fantastic. We'll make sure to put all the links in the show notes below, and then also on the YouTube feed as well. And we'll make a blog post and give everybody links. Oh,
absolutely.
This is coming out after we announce the website. Yes, we're also putting out our own website.
Yeah,
so,
Matt's been hard at work at it.
I've been hard at work on that. So
that's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's just we have this, the Rando website with the podcast feed, and we wanted to just jazz it up just a tad.
It's not random. It's with the podcast hosting
service. I know,
but it's just doesn't allow us to do more fun and interesting.
We'll put it out
things,
as a blog post as well, so make sure it's there.
Yeah, we will.
Just to wrap up, do you guys have short words of wisdom to any young parents? You're going through the preschool first year homeschooling. There's potentially someone listening who's about to do that. What type of words of wisdom can you give to them?
Yeah, I think one of the most comforting things that I found was that originally the concept of how to teach a subject in my mind was still very much like the lecture based. I need to have that information and I need to pass that information to you. But it's very much not, and it doesn't have to be that. That it can be an experience where you can learn alongside your kids, and saying I don't know to your kids, I find it to be a very empowering experience for them too. Just say I don't know, but let's figure this out together, and that takes a lot of the pressure off from saying how am I going to teach all our kids all this stuff? I don't know it myself. To hey, this is kind of exciting. I can learn a lot of new things about a lot of new things as well. And so it can be, a really rewarding experience, personally as well as for your kids.
Yeah. And I think for, like I mentioned earlier, the flexibility of it, I think is one of the things I love the most about it, but it's also one of the saving graces of it too, because you may find that you've started down a path with a certain curriculum or a certain idea, or you have this idea for this really cool art project that's going to tie into this unit of study that you were doing, and whatever, and it might just all not work out, and it's okay. But being flexible, I think, is really key. We started off with a curriculum with the 4-year-old we started off with a reading curriculum for our oldest that she was completely resistant to. Like, I mean, I would literally bring the book off the bookshelf and she would be like, "Oh, Mom." And after like 7 or 8 lessons with it, I was like, forget this. Like she's not enjoying it. This is a girl who loves sitting down and reading. She loves everything about stories, and she's dreading anytime I bring down this book. We got to change things up and maintaining that flexibility and making sure that whatever you're doing with your family has to work for you, and it also has to work for your kids. And if that changes, whether it's 3 months into it, 6 months into it, that's okay. But I think having, allowing yourself that, space for that flexibility is really important, and probably also very helpful.
Great. That's a great way to wrap it up.
Flexibility is perfect. I agree. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
This was wonderful.
Yeah, great. It was really great talking with you guys.
We'll double date again soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
The random connections, and shared backgrounds are hilarious.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!